Aren't we like Mary and Joseph? We get a little upset when Jesus isn't where we expect him to be, where we want him to be, where we left him, where he ought to be. Our Jesus is quite often not in the place that, our mind would tell us he ought to be. Sometimes we find him in the most astonishing places. I remember in the middle of my senior year that teacher of ours, Ed Shula, decided to do something that I'd never really done before, but I'd heard that other churches and schools did. They decided to have a lock-in in the school gym on a Friday night, and they did it as an outreach to other kids from other schools, and they wanted us to invite our friends who were not Christians from other schools, and we were going to have fun, stay up all night, eat pizza, watch movies, but do some Jesus stuff. And I can remember when I arrived after school, right after school to help set up, there was somebody sitting right inside the door of the gym. Now, you need to understand that we at our school didn't have a gym for a long, long time. And when we finally got one, there were rules that made the 10 Commandments look easy compared to all the stuff you could or couldn't do in the gymnasium. So I walked in the gymnasium on that Friday afternoon, the treasured possession of GCA, and there was a kid sitting on the floor, and they were making posters and flyers and banners and all kinds of stuff. And so I said to Mr. Shula, what can I do to help? And he said, I tell you what, if you'll take over for Susie Q here and finish coloring this poster, then I'll go over here and do something else with her. So I sat down on the floor and I colored, and the poster, I don't remember what else it said, but it said Jesus Christ on it in some verse or whatever. So I was finishing the Christ part of Jesus Christ, and I was coloring it very carefully with a big fat magic marker type thing, really doing a great job. And when I was finally done and so proud of my poster, I picked it up, and guess what had happened? It had bled through right onto the gym floor. Now, this wasn't a concrete floor, and it wasn't one of those wooden floors. It was with that poured polyurethane finish, real smooth. And guess what it wouldn't do? It wouldn't come off. And so when you looked inside the front door of the gymnasium, as you walked in the door, what was on the floor but Jesus Christ? Well, my father was the principal of that school, who had spent many a night away from home out rattling the saber to raise the money for that gymnasium and its floor. And I didn't know this, but Mr. Shula did a really awesome and Jesus-like thing. He didn't tell them who it was that colored Jesus Christ on the floor of the gymnasium. He took the heat for it himself. And so by the time I awoke from my long winter's slumber on Saturday night from the lock-in on Friday night, I was sitting at the counter in my kitchen, and I'm telling my dad about all the great things that Jesus had done in the gymnasium the night before. And I said, man, I just hate that I made the mistake of coloring that poster where I did. And he goes, wait a minute, that was you? I was like, yeah, I thought you knew that. No, he wouldn't tell me. Well, my dad, God love him, he picked up the phone and he called the vice principal, who was also the high school athletic director, and ratted me out. And I got really, really, really mad at my father. I mean, full tilt. My father left the room, and I told my little brother, I said, you tell him I'll see him tomorrow. And I got in the car and I drove down the street to my friend Cliff's house, where I was intending to spend the night. Let's just say that my dad jerked my chain, and I did not spend the night at Cliff's house that night, and we had a little fisticuffs in the living room about all sorts of things. But you know why we got so astonishingly angry at each other? Because our Jesus wasn't where we expected him to be. Is yours?